Great to see everybody here. Very excited to be doing this today. Can you hear me better now? Okay, I'm talking more into the mic. So, welcome everybody. We will get going, and we're very pleased to have our RMIT Vice Chancellor, Professor Alec Campbell, who's made time to welcome us and introduce the event today. Thanks, Alec.
So thanks, Julian. Hello, everyone. I'm Alec Cameron, Vice Chancellor and President of RMIT, and it's my pleasure to welcome you, those who are guests, to the university. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and pay our respects to their elders past and present. Today's workshop is a collaboration between the ARC Centre of Excellence for Automated Decision Making and Society and the University of Southern California's Election Cybersecurity Initiative. And the workshop addresses the question, are fair elections possible in the age of AI? I know it's been a team undertaking, but I'd like to call out Julian Thomas, Director of ADM+S and members of the Centre, and Clayton Powell and his esteemed colleagues who've travelled from the University of Southern California and been integral to the shaping of this event. Thanks also to the Australian Electoral Commissioner, Tom Rogers, for making the time to be with us today. And to the researchers, policymakers, journalists and investigators of all kinds, both in the room and online attending this event. I applaud your commitment, your collective commitment today to today's conversation. It is timely indeed to examine and to question the capabilities and ramifications of current AI systems, the dynamics of the digital media platforms that deploy and develop AI, and the institutional, technical and regulatory strategies that can protect elections now and into the future. Back in the late 1800s, when RMIT started in its earliest form, our purpose was to provide training in the technologies, arts and trades of 19th century Melbourne. RMIT took shape at a time when the Industrial Revolution was rapidly transforming life and work, and when the development of new democratic institutions was the subject of intense debate and experimentation, including, of course, the Federation of the Australian States leading up to 1901. Today, RMIT's purpose remains. We exist to expand access to life-changing education, to solve problems together through research which makes a difference, and to meet our community's needs for skilled and knowledgeable citizens. But the environment in which we work is vastly changed, and one key change is the emergence of new forms of automation driven by AI. What we now term generative AI has led to widespread access to tools which can produce content that is difficult and even impossible to distinguish from human work. These technologies have the capacity to improve essential services, uplift the care economy, support creative practice, and enhance human welfare. Yet we are acutely aware of the risks these technologies create, including acute risks for our democratic institutions and processes. AI is able to rapidly disseminate disinformation, while at the same time it becomes increasingly difficult for most people to distinguish trustworthy sources of news and information from others. At RMIT, given our history and outlook, we focus not only on the technology itself or its economic potential, but also on what it means for our broader social and civic life. What do we need to know, and what do we need to do to manage the risks of new technologies? Events such as this are critical for broadening our understanding of the challenges. A critical part of that is sharing knowledge and making the vital connections and comparisons across countries and disciplines. For this reason, we're delighted to welcome our visitors from USC. We're also proud at RMIT to host the Australian Research Council Centre for Excellence for Automated Decision Making and Society. The Centre's cross-disciplinary, international approach to creating the knowledge and strategies necessary for responsible and ethical AI reflects RMIT's collaborative outlook. On that note, I will hand over with thanks to all involved for making possible this timely opportunity to share research and insights. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave at this time, but I hope you all enjoy the day and I look forward to hearing more about the outcomes in the future. Thanks, Julian.
So we're sitting here at this instead of speaking from the lectern because we're just waiting to get the microphone there sorted out, but we think this could work quite well. And many thanks to Alec for his opening remarks. I should have introduced myself properly. Of course, I'm Julian Thomas. I'm the Director of the ARC Centre of Excellence for Automated Decision Making and Society here at RMIT. And like Alec, we're absolutely delighted to be welcoming you and our colleagues from University of Southern California to this day. We're really excited about the chance to share our research, our knowledge, our understanding of the whole range of complex issues that arise around the question of fair elections and AI, and it's of course a very timely moment to do so. So I'll just begin, I suppose, by setting the scene a little bit, acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting here today, the Wurundjeri people of the Eastern Kulin Nations. You can see on our slide there an image that our centre commissioned from the artist Triana Ham, which is entitled Information Retrieval on Country, a painting that inspires us to think about the complex interactions between the automated systems, the AIs, and the technologies that we're concerned with, and the land and people we encounter here in this country. Also to reflect on the wisdom and guidance of First Nations people as we pursue our research. We have a welcome message from Andrew Charlton, who's the Commonwealth Government's Special Envoy for Cybersecurity and Digital Resilience. He's also the member of the House of Representatives for Parramatta. So he has sent us a text message. You can see it there on the screen. That text, it might be a little hard to read all of that, but what he's saying, let me just say this, Andrew says the Australian government recognises the seriousness of the challenges facing election security today. Technology is advancing at an unprecedented pace, transforming our world in ways that are both exciting and unsettling. As a government, we're committed to addressing these challenges head on. Our focus is threefold: strengthening cybersecurity defences to protect critical election infrastructure, fostering public awareness to empower citizens, businesses and communities, and driving collaboration between experts, policymakers and platforms to create resilient systems. So three things that are the focus for government right now. He goes on to say that as a Member of Parliament, election security is more than just a policy issue, it's personal. Campaigning today often feels like navigating uncharted territory. Can we fully rely on the polls we use to understand public sentiment? How do we ensure that the messages shaping public debate are rooted in truth and not distorted by misinformation or manipulation? These challenges remind us of the importance of trust, not only in our systems, but in the democratic process itself. So I think some quite sort of significant comments there that actually touch on a lot of the key themes of today's event. If we think about the theme of the workshop, it does go, as Andrew suggests there, beyond just the narrow technical question of cybersecurity to address this larger question around fairness around how we can ensure honesty, impartiality, equitableness and justness in the conduct of our elections. Andrew Charlton also, I think, points correctly to the many challenges in the current digital environment, the flourishing of mis and disinformation, the scope for manipulation of algorithmic systems, the vulnerabilities of our digital information infrastructures, the difficulties around detecting deep fakes and other kinds of disinformation and content, the accountability gaps that exist for transnational and offshore platforms, and the observability and transparency gaps. So they're all the kinds of things that we're concerned with today. They're the issues that have stimulated today's event. When Adam came, visited Australia earlier this year and suggested that we think about an event like this, I was really delighted because I knew that there was a great deal of interest and concern about what was going on, a great deal of interest in the wave of elections that we've had through 2024 and beyond, and a great deal of important research that was going on in different disciplines, institutions and places that had something significant to say about it. So really delighted to welcome Adam Clayton Powell from the Annenberg School, his colleague Judy Kang, and also Jeff Cole, who's with us up there, who will be talking a bit later to this event. So just what are the kind of key questions that we're addressing in the agenda today? These, we thought that just to work through it sort of systematically in terms of a set of research questions and problems, trying to understand what has been going on and how and why things have happened the way they have, how the Australian political communication environment is changing and has changed, how much do we know about the economy of influence that now pertains across the array of digital platforms that we encounter, which are not only the large American digital platforms that we read a lot about, but also others. And how much do we know about the flows of mis and disinformation? How is the cybersecurity landscape changing for elections? How do we address the challenges of auditing election results? How do we address the challenges of observing, verifying and reporting on political communication? So these were the sorts of questions that we wanted to address today, and we're really thrilled and delighted to have been able to bring together an extraordinary group of speakers who from across many institutions and disciplines who we think have got a great deal to say about these problems. The responses to those questions we think are likely to require collaboration across countries, which is why the chance to learn from our colleagues at USC and elsewhere is so valuable. But not just that, colleagues across disciplines, in the technical sciences, social sciences and the humanities, across sectors, so going beyond universities, looking at the work that's going on in media organisations and elsewhere, and engaging, of course, with the key institutions and platforms. Looking hard at what kinds of new methods, tools and infrastructures might be necessary to understand these sorts of questions. And from our point of view, as a research centre here at RMIT, and as part of a national research centre, how do we go about building the long-term research capabilities that are necessary? So they're the fundamental questions which have driven our thinking about what we could do today. wanted to say a little bit, for those of you who may not know much about it, but just a bit about us at the ARC Centre of Excellence. We just call it ADM+S. It's got a long, complicated title. Just use that. It's fine. So it is a cross-disciplinary centre. It's a national research centre funded by the Australian Research Council from 2020 to 2027. So we're just a little bit more than halfway through our life right now. The remit of the centre is to connect academic research with industry, government and the community to develop responsible, ethical and inclusive automated decision-making systems for the benefit of everybody. And when we talk about automated decision-making systems, we are talking, of course, about AIs of many kinds, as well as other systems that use different technologies, cloud-based systems, data matching systems, all those kinds of things. But AIs have come to the fore in recent years. We aim to do a number of things, including to enhance public understanding, inform public debate, and to train researchers to work on the really challenging questions that we see arising in this space right now. So we're going to talk about all of those things, we think, today. We do think that public understanding and engagement part of this picture is just as important as some of the fundamental questions. Just to say a little bit more, the centre involves researchers from 9 Australian universities. It's based here at RMIT in Melbourne, 280 researchers overall, and we do have 21 industry partners and international research partners. Have a look at our website if you want to learn more about us. Don't hesitate to get in touch. I wanted to just say a little bit more about some of the research capabilities that we're trying to build in our research centre to help us engage with the sorts of issues that we're encountering in relation to elections. So one of our projects is the Australian Internet Observatory, which has been funded through the Commonwealth Government's National Competitive Research Infrastructure Scheme from this year onwards to build a new set of tools which enable people to have a higher level of visibility of the complex interactions between citizens, between people and users, and the digital platforms that we deal with every day. And of course, we know how important they are in the whole picture of political communication. So I'm not going to say a huge amount about what the Internet Observatory, how it will work exactly. We'll discuss more of that today. But what it represents is an understanding that, which I think is quite important in the research landscape now, that if we are to know more about these critical questions, these critical problems of, for example, the circulation of mis and disinformation, we need to engage users of the system. We need to engage citizens. So you can think of the Australian Internet Observatory as a kind of citizen science project, where what we are wanting to do is to work with the users of digital platforms, the people who encounter the ads and the political communications of all kinds every day, work with them on the data that they themselves can derive from the platform in order to understand what's going on. So rather than relying exclusively on research relationships with the digital platforms, we work with the users and get an understanding from their end about what's going on. I think that illustrates, I suppose, our approach to trying to bring together this question of citizen engagement and public education around the risks and opportunities and possible benefits of emerging technologies with the challenge of observability and understanding what is actually going on between people and platforms that that play such a significant role in this space. So I hope that gives you a bit of a feel for the context and our work in ADM+S. We'll talk more about these systems through the day, so I hope you'll learn more about them and also have the chance to raise issues and questions, discuss problems with us. We'll have plenty of opportunity for that. But I'm really delighted now that we'll move to Adam and Judy and some consideration of the work that has been going on at USC around cybersecurity and elections over the last number of years, which has really inspired us in many ways. We can talk about that further, but I'm going to hand over to Adam and Judy now to talk through the research they've been doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Julian, and thanks to all of you at RMIT who have welcomed us and have been working with Julian and colleagues to develop this conference. Our job was to get on an airplane and get here on time. But we'll give you a little bit of history, very briefly, of what we do, a little bit of the context, and then focus quite a bit on what happened last month in the United States in the election. And I want to circle back to a word which Dr. Charlton used in his remarks, which is that this is personal, not just personal for political candidates, it's personal for each of us as individuals, as citizens, those of us who are citizens in democracies, but it is something which affects each of us as individuals, and we're going to get to that during our presentation, because more and more these things that affect elections affect us personally and very deeply. These are our names and affiliations. We'll be here during breaks if you have any further questions. And we also invite each of you to join us, and it's quite easy. So, Judy?
Our email address is very straightforward. It's truevote@usc.edu. And if you'd like to stay informed, we have a weekly newsletter that gets sent out every Sunday. You can subscribe it. You can visit our website. It's www.electionsecurity.usc.edu, or you can send us an email anytime at truevote@usc.edu.
And you probably have all heard the joke that it's better to be lucky than to be smart. We were lucky. In 2015, almost 10 years ago, we were having a meeting at the USC Washington office on something totally unrelated. And the gentleman sitting on the left with his hands raised is Vint Cerf, who actually invented the internet. And about 10:30 or 11 in the morning, he said, all right, we've solved that problem. Now let's deal with the securing everything connected to the internet. And it's like, that's a big job. He said, yes, you have to start somewhere, so let's get started. He was and is a vice president at Google, gave us a little bit of money to get organized. This was USC's president, who I saw a few months later, and I told him what we were doing, and he said, you're thinking too narrowly. This is not just, in my appointments at USC, were engineering and communications. He said, this is not just engineering and communications. It's also the School of Public Policy. It's also the business school. It's also the law school. You want to let the college know what you're doing, political science. And I remember my first response was, you want me to report to 4 deans? You know, but we all got along. And in 2018, in our off-year election, we had a little bit of money, and we did 6 states, 6 of the 50 states. And then in 2020, courtesy of a major gift from Google, we were able to actually do each and every one of the 50 US states with cybersecurity training. We reached several thousand election directors and campaign workers. As we were planning this, we had meetings with different people who run elections and run political campaigns, including presidential campaigns in the United States. And 2 of them, who are now at USC, are Bob Shrum, who ran John Kerry's 2004 Democratic presidential campaign, and Mike Murphy, who ran Jeb Bush's campaign in 2016. And we had a list of things that we were going to cover in each of our sessions. And I remember Bob Shrum looked at it and just said, no, 3. We'll get to do 3 things. Oh, okay. And he said, I said, okay, we'll try to do these 3 things: basic cybersecurity, disinformation, and resilience. I said, so we're like you guys. You know, you ran 50 state presidential campaigns. We're going to run a 50 state campaign without a candidate. And again, as Bob Shrum leaned forward, he said, Adam, you're wrong. Your candidate is democracy. It's like, whoa. And everybody in the room said, okay, that's our motto. And I said, and Bob, we're going to credit you whenever we use it. So that's been our motto. We went out to the 50 states, beginning in Maryland in January. This was our opening session just outside of Baltimore. And it's just down the road from the National Security Agency. So we had a number of NSA people who came, not as speakers, but came to watch what we were doing. This may be my favorite one. This is the only other one we're going to show. This may be my favorite one. The state of Ohio gave us the state capitol. And they said, you have the state capitol for your program, just take it over. So we are actually under the Capitol dome of the state of Ohio. It had the advantage of everybody who worked in the state government could see us from their offices, and they would come down. And also we had a free lunch, so that helped. In 2022, the next year, we began to get invitations from other countries. So we've expanded to Africa, to Asia, Europe, and now Australia. This is our 5th continent. Typical was in South Africa, where we had somebody who was the South African Electoral Commission, similar to our visitor here today. And he said that we don't have a problem here in South Africa because we vote on paper, not on computers, as you do in the United States, and we have central control. The problem they had was, how do you secure the voter rolls? And sure enough, some people in Russia, he said, we don't know if it's the Russian government or just criminals, were attacking South Africa's centralized computer voter rolls, hoping to hold them up and say, nice election you're having there, please pay us. We also have global interest in artificial intelligence, and that's really something new this year. Again, to use an example from Africa, we joined with African universities to do a 2-day conference on global artificial intelligence, elections, and the future of democracy. They came to us. We would not have thought of doing such a conference, but they came to us as Julian and his colleagues have come to us to offer to partner on this program. Let's talk about some of the other things that we've done. And Judy, why don't you go through some of these?
So this year, as everybody knew, there was a presidential election in the United States. We organized programs at both major national conventions, July in Milwaukee, August in Chicago. It was for people who are there, including journalists, delegates, and policy election advisors. And we did some more programs at our new USC Washington, D.C. campus. And one was called Fake Videos and Election Cybersecurity in the Age of AI. Everything is recorded and it's available online. And earlier this year, we were invited to speak in Singapore, Taiwan, and South Africa. In October, we are in Cyprus, and today we are here in Melbourne. Most of our events are open to the public and it's live streamed, and recordings are available, but some events are off the record, closed events, because some sensitive information we get from speakers, from intelligence agencies, we want to protect them from bad actors. These are one-pager reports from 2021 and 2022. As Adam mentioned, we did all 50 states workshop in 2020, and we switched it to regional workshops. So you can see all these numbers. It highlights our local state partners, including state universities and media partners. And our national media partner was the Associated Press. And we were requested to issue the recognition of attendance because some states, they encourage their staff, people in cybersecurity to attend our workshop and during their work hours. So it was very helpful just to hear everybody's opinion with local people, elected officials, and academia, journalists, and civic organizations, and people in public, just in campaigns. On the top, you can see the numbers from both political parties. We are very careful showing people of balanced representation from both parties. And these are also available, and you can download them from our website.
So let's begin to look at what happened last month in the United States elections. And we'll have some examples also from September and October. So this is what we were expecting, that Russian-paid influencers would try to influence the election. But as is so often the case, we saw some surprises because the bad actors have R&D budgets and they respond to ways that we are defending against their actions. So here's an example of, an article from the Washington Post back in October on Russia's attempts to influence the 2024 election in favor of Donald Trump, which they said were accelerating. On the other side, here are anti-Trump TikTok videos that were created with artificial intelligence traced to overseas accounts, many in Iran. I love this image, a fire hose of disinformation from China, pointing at 2 Republican local legislators. And you have experience with that here in Australia, that China will go after local contests and not, at least in the United States, they didn't focus this year on the national election. The presidential election, they went after local political candidates who they thought were hostile to Chinese interests. Here's Iran, again, using AI to try to influence the election, in this case, posting fake news articles, and more often than not, trying to just increase polarization in the United States, increase distrust of democracy itself. The machinery of election in the United States was attacked. This is New York Times, page 1. County clerks and secretaries of state being overwhelmed by a deluge of disinformation. Again, we're talking about county clerks. Sometimes these are, we have 8,000 election districts in the United States. Sometimes these are people who are volunteering to run elections, and suddenly they're deluged as never before by the disinformation and hostility. This may be the first head of state victimized by artificial intelligence, Vladimir Putin. Who would have thought that it would be Russia that would be the first head of the Russian head of state would be the first head of state to be to have a deep fake created that was so good that it fooled his own television and radio networks. And so this was a fake declaration of martial law by Putin. He never said this. But again, it was so good that Russian television and radio put it on the air. And you can imagine what the Kremlin's reaction was. They said, no, stop, take it off, take it off. But as far as we know, this is the first time that a head of state actually was successfully victimized at that level. So let's look at what was different this year from 2024, and it builds on some of the things that we saw earlier.
So one significant finding is that bad actors continue to exploit the same vulnerabilities that have existed during the past 2 election cycles. So one major common weakness is password, which remain the primary attack vector. So as Adam mentioned, one of our main lessons that we give out is to change your password, and we conduct our post workshop survey, and we've found out that 90% of people who attended our workshop actually changed their password. We don't want to know what it was before, and we just learned one government office used their password was password, not even with a capital P. And as our presenter was demonstrating, these are the good password that you want to use. We saw some people actually writing it down. So we're like, no, don't use this, because it was broadcasted internationally and domestically also. So that's one of the things that people think, yeah, we know it already, but people don't tend to do it. And the second one is multi-factor authentication. When you log into your online banking, you receive a phone call or text, and you have to input the special code that they send you. We ask people to implement it for all of their political and election website. And social engineering, they manipulate individual so that they release their sensitive information. And unprotected data on laptops and phones. And we realized that and noticed a lot of people, they don't realize they are not turned on by default. So we let people know that you have to turn them on individually. It's not automatically turned on. So what happened in 2016, if you talk to anybody who were political consultant, election advisors, they would say that it was a social media election. And what about this year? People say it was artificial intelligence, intelligent election. So what is it exactly, and what has really happened?
So here were some of the quotes that we saw that Senator Mark Warner, who is an expert in these things, he said Russian election interference in 2016 was child's play, that now domestic and foreign AI tools, now this is before the election, this was back in, this is a year ago, he said domestic and foreign AI tools can completely mess up an election. And David Sanger, who covers intelligence for the New York Times and has spoken in our workshops, he says the reason that it's a big problem is it's cheap and easy. It's so cheap to do that, in fact, in one of our workshops, he said, this is the most asymmetrical form of warfare ever invented by humanity, that you can have a couple of people sitting somewhere, anywhere in the world, and they can take on a government. And it's also ubiquitous. Here again, we saw adversaries extending information warfare into different unexpected areas. We were caught by surprise when Microsoft said they started seeing Russian propaganda popping up in Minecraft and other video games. So it's in unexpected places, and with artificial intelligence, you can tailor it very, very precisely to the individual who's playing the game. Pretexting, we're seeing this more and more. Certainly, this is not something that's unknown. This goes back again to last year, but it makes fake messages look more believable because it looks like they're coming from a friend or relative or maybe your boss, and so it makes it more tempting for you to respond to it, to react to it, and maybe to do something which, again, compromises your security. We're going to see much more of this from my colleague Jeff Cole, who'll be speaking shortly. But here's what we saw in the annual Reuters Politics Institute survey, which is earlier data. Jeff has newer data. But we saw early on that what is happening is that people are skeptical about everything now. And this is just the question they asked about what is real and fake on online news. And 59%, this is worldwide, said they were concerned, but for some reason, we don't know quite why. That's why we do research. It's higher in South Africa and the United States. And as I said, these are old data, and Jeff will have new numbers shortly. This may be the only occasion that we know, the only example we know of artificial intelligence and a deep fake actually changing an election result. We're not certain, but we think this actually changed an election result in Slovakia, and that a candidate who was supporting closer ties to Russia, who had been behind in the polls, wound up winning. And the audio recording, which may have had the single most effective appeal to voting against the candidate, was a fake audio of the candidate saying he would raise the price of beer. So, so it's interesting what they were able to find a point of interest that that was not just abstract, but very personal. What we're seeing now, and we all know this intellectually, but we're seeing this now viscerally, that this is a Wall Street Journal reporter who decided to use inexpensive, off-the-shelf artificial intelligence software. Anybody can download it. And she cloned her own voice. And then she called her relatives. And you can see that one of the problems was that the bot didn't pause to take breaths. So her sister was a little bit suspicious. But it was so good. The imitation was so precise that it fooled the Chase Bank biometric system and got access to her bank account. So some of my friends in security say biometrics aren't really great because if you can hack your biometric, you're in real trouble. If your biometric can be hacked, you're in real trouble. Another problem we're having is that as AI trains itself, it can train itself on bad information. And here's a classic. This was last summer when the Washington Post conducted tests, and they simply asked Amazon's Alexa and a couple of other commonly used and very popular voice systems who won the 2020 election. And because there's enough bad information out there, the system couldn't produce the correct answer, or it would shut down completely if you were asking a Microsoft or Google system. So again, there's this disinformation loop. There's new research now actually within the past month that AI systems that train on AI data are less accurate than the first round. It's like it's what happens in biology when systems start, I guess, inbreeding. Here are some ways that covert influence operations were using AI. And this is from OpenAI, from their data. Content generation with fewer human errors than before, and content generation on a scale that we haven't seen. And again, for the US election, we're still not certain how much fake information was produced. We're still working on this. I see some of you have your phones out taking pictures. We're happy to share these slides with you if you send us an email. Faking engagement, making your fake account look popular, generating replies to your own post. So it makes it look bigger than it is. And then finally, using ways of using AI as a way of dealing with just straightforward technical issues, debugging code, summarizing social media posts. And this was something interesting from our session in the UK where we had somebody from British intelligence as a speaker. And I think we all found this really interesting.
Yeah, it was in, we are in Glasgow, Scotland, and we learned some fascinating defensive strategies shared by a British intelligence officer. So here's a, we showed you the previous articles from Wall Street Journal, a reporter who had an easy access, and it was cheap and easy to use to fake her voice. So what do you do when somebody calls you and do a certain thing? The answer was very simple, but yeah, very effective. You hang up. You say, thank you, I'll call you back, and you hang up, and you call them back. You do not use the phone number that you received from. You actually find their name and call them back and check. Did you call? Is that what you requested? So that was something very simple, but it was very effective. And what about the Zoom, like video meeting? Everybody uses video meeting. What if your prime minister says something and asks for you to do something? And this is what they do in the beginning of each meeting. You do that. So if you have like a long hair like me, you have to do that. And you have to do that. What is it? Software, they don't do a good job with your ear and back of your head now. It will eventually, it will. But we were talking to other people yesterday. So far, it's not doing a good job. So it's a good strategy now to find out if you're a real human being or a deepfake.
And the last one was family passwords. Now, why would British intelligence be interested in family passwords? It's to protect each and every one of us as an individual against a common criminal approach, which is to have a voice which seems to be a relative saying, I need $3,000 right away, please send it to me at this account. And you say, oh, okay, fine. No, anybody who's asking you for something in any way unusual, ask for a password, which means you have to set up a password ahead of time. So my wife and I, we have a password that we know about, and if either of us forgets it, we just say, here's the number of letters, and then, oh yes, that's it. So family passwords, this is like science fiction. This is the way we live now. Speaking of attacks, what we found in 2020, the single most, this is going back 4 years, the single most interesting and perhaps troubling innovation by Russia was to find points of vulnerability in the United States. This is a photograph of Gary Pruitt, the then president of the Associated Press. He's on our advisory board, which is how we found out about this. It's not classified, so this is not classified information. But Gary said we could talk about it publicly, and he discussed it in our first workshop in 2021, and the video is on our website. He said that he was called by the US Secretary of Homeland Security shortly before the election and said that we, the United States government, have identified the Associated Press as a point of security vulnerability for the United States. And Gary said, that's not the kind of phone call you want to get. You know, okay, but it enabled us to work with Homeland Security and with security agencies to harden our computer operations, to go to duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate backups. And so there we were on election night in 2020, and what happened? We had thousands of sophisticated attacks, both from Russia, trying to take down our computer system. So it's an attack on the media. I said, Gary, you have to explain. I used to run political coverage for CBS News. So you have to explain to our audience here of election workers what would have happened if Russia had successfully taken down the AP computer system. And he said, oh, there'd be no election returns. What? The sole source of election returns for the United States on election night is the Associated Press computer system. Russia had figured that out. And if they'd been able to take down the AP computer system, Gary said, imagine turning on your television or your laptop and you're in Tokyo or London or Melbourne, and oh, the United States had a presidential election today, but we won't know for weeks who won because that's how long it takes the states to certify the results. He said, think of what that does to faith in democracy, let alone the United States. So we're always looking for surprises like that. What was discovered by an adversary that we weren't expecting? And this is I don't want to say it's luck. It was, I actually met the person who discovered the Russian probe that was looking for the Associated Press and alerted Homeland Security. So we had enough people watching that they were able to find it before it happened. Beyond unanticipated points of vulnerability, we still have flawed and outdated software. In our, as I say, we have 8,000 election districts. In each election district, where, when, and how you vote is different. So even within a state, even within a county, within a city, you can have different ways of doing elections. Something new this year, to make voting more convenient in the United States, many areas have said that you can vote anywhere near your home, not in your election district. You can vote anywhere in the county, anywhere in the city. Well, the only way that works to be secure is that all the election districts have to be connected in real time, which is exactly what we've been telling people not to do. You don't want to be connected to the internet. Well, now they have to be connected in real time, which increases vulnerability. And the last item, which again, this is an area where I think we really have to look at it through research. There's some evidence that using AI, that some have been able to penetrate anonymity of voting. This is extremely troubling because there's a reason, in the United States, we have anonymous voting and we call it the Australian ballot. There's a reason the United States went to the Australian system. It's because people used to be threatened or paid to vote a certain way. So here are some conclusions. This is our last set of slides. This is some conclusions based on a conference a week ago Friday and one person there has access to classified information. We don't do classified information. I don't want it in my head. I don't want it on my phone. But those who do classified information said, here are some things that happened. The deepfake dog didn't bark. We didn't see Donald Trump endorsing Vice President Harris. It was one of the sort of common fantasies. Instead, what we saw were AI-driven digital drone swarms, where hundreds of thousands, millions of accounts and messages were generated using artificial intelligence, targeted very precisely. So while everybody's looking at, has Facebook cracked down on disinformation? What about Elon Musk and X? Instead, they just went right around that and went to people individually in huge numbers. The final thing that we learned was, again from somebody who has access to classified information, is it's still too early for us to know what really happened. We don't know what we don't know. And it'll take about, the estimate from the National Security Agency is it'll take about 2 more months to try to actually learn what really happened on the dark web and below the radar screen. And the other thing that we know is that no one believes anything. And that's what Jeff Cole is going to talk about. So that's our experience. And again, we look forward to
please come to our website, electionsecurity.usc.edu. You can subscribe our weekly newsletter, which shows our events, partner events, and it also features selective news articles on election cybersecurity, disinformation, misinformation, local and international elections. If you have any questions,
And again, to go back to your comments, one of the things we want to do in these sessions around the world is to connect researchers and connect everyone. So we have several thousand people who subscribe to our weekly newsletter. We're not in that business, but people who are in the newsletter business, they say, you have an open rate of more than 30% within a few hours of sending it out. That's extraordinary. So people are really opening it, and we invite you to join us.
Thanks very much, Adam and Judy. We've got time for some questions, and before jumping into them, just a note on the microphones. So you've got that little button in front of you that will turn your microphone on. Please use it. We do want to use the microphones because we're recording this, and we've also got about 50 people participating in this event online. So please use your microphones. Now, the other thing about the microphones is we can just have a few of them on at once. So when you've spoken, please remember to turn it off.
And we'll be here all day if you want to just talk to us during a tea break or during lunch.
Open invitation. Let's start with some questions. Alex, I can see you there.
It's like Parliament, they only allow one person to speak at once. Makes it very, very nice in the chamber. Hi, my name's Alex. I run the postgraduate journalism programs here at RMIT. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. Took lots of notes and slides, and I've signed up for the newsletter already, I hope. But I'm particularly interested in how they got to the individuals, and if you could if you have anything more on that, I'm particularly interested in that very small part, because I'm worried about how that's happening in Australia.
We began to see in 2016, it was the Cambridge Analytica, and actually Donald Trump's campaign had an operation based not in Washington, D.C. or New York or Los Angeles, where there are a lot of reporters, but in San Antonio, Texas. And they had a highly effective way of individually messaging people. Now with AI, what we've seen this year is that you can scale this so that you can actually look at online and publicly available information driver's license records, which are online in the United States, voting records that are often online in the United States. Then you match them up with other things that that individual has done or written on social media or has said in public. So you can create very, very precise profiles of millions of people, and then, again, using AI, direct tailored messages to each of them. And we knew this was coming. I mean, ChatGPT is only 2 years old, 2 years and 1 month, I think. But using AI tools, there's a joke that, you know, our phones know us better than we do. Well, now with AI, you can do profiles of individuals, of things that, you know, I've forgotten what I wrote on social media 5 years ago. AI hasn't forgotten. And so they can actually pull up, one example that somebody used yesterday was they can pull up something about your grandmother. Your grandmother is concerned about her pension. So, okay, so your grandmother's concerned about her pension. You know, Donald Trump is going to take her pension away. So that kind of very precise information can be used in ways that are very powerful and that we hadn't expected at scale yet. So the technology is moving faster than, and adoption is moving faster than we expected. Oh, yeah.
Hi folks, thanks for that. My name is Ben from Swinburne University. You mentioned this notion around chatbots won't say who won the 2020 election and this idea about that being potentially a messy data problem. But I wonder if you've encountered this sort of other dimension of that, of organisations intentionally not wanting to be seen as political by kind of framing out certain things like that. So whether there's an actual, you know, intent by whoever's running ChatGPT or, you know, Microsoft or whoever to sort of say, well, we don't want to be part of that controversy, so we're going to shut that down. I wonder if you've seen the, there's I think David Mayer thing that's happened over the last few days as well, which is an interesting case of this maybe.
I'm sorry, if you could just summarize, I missed your question.
Sorry, the question about how much it's actually intentional that something like ChatGPT would not answer the question who won the 2020 election.
What we do is we focus on what we think is the most difficult problem, which is intentional actions by bad actors, especially Russia, China, Iran, and people with the money and expertise to do it. There's a tremendous amount of activity by bad actors within the country, and then there's misinformation that people that might be sharing. That they believe or that they are accidentally passing on. So what our focus is on, as I said, what we think is the most difficult problem, which is intentional bad actions by people with expertise and money, on the theory that if you can defend against them and deal with them, you're really going to deal with the others. I don't know if that's a complete answer, but that gives you some idea of our priorities in that area. Oh my, lots of hands.
Hi, Chris Lickie, Melbourne Uni. What do you think the trends might be in the 2028 election, and what could we start doing about it now? Just putting you on an easy question there for you.
That's a really good question because again, when I was back at I'm a sort of a recovering journalist. When I used to do elections at CBS and later at National Public Radio, the day after the election, you begin to say, okay, what are we going to do next time? And we would have lessons learned from last night or last week. And the problem now is that we won't know for a couple of months what exactly happened. And the other thing that we don't know for 28 is, as I said, Russia, China, Iran, mainly Russia, have R&D budgets. And Putin set up a competition. I don't know if it's still there, but in 2020, he had a competition of two competing state agencies to see which one could disrupt democracy better. You want to please the boss, really make a hash of democracy. And they came up with some pretty clever things. There was one in the United States where if you use an American citizen to spread Russian propaganda, that creates a legal problem in the United States because we have a First Amendment. It could be his or her free speech. Maybe we've had examples of individuals, including journalists, who write word for word Russian propaganda. You can find it on RT or another Russian site. And they said, we didn't realize it was Russian propaganda. So it's something that is difficult for us to, what was that called? It was called franchising, I think was the term. So 4 years from now, the only known, what's the joke? The only known is, no, excuse me, the only constant is change. That's what we're dealing with. We know that 4 years from now, it'll be different. Who knows where the AI technology is going to be 4 years from now? And who knows where the points of vulnerability for democracies will be 4 years from now. So it's too early. It's thinking back to elections that I covered as a journalist. It almost seems like the 19th century now.
Thanks. Mairead Doyle here from the Victorian Electoral Commission here in Melbourne. I'm interested in the first question about the micro-targeting of individuals. Do you have or can you recall any examples of where that micro-targeting, AI-driven micro-targeting has happened into, I think, what you call the machinery of electoral administration? I'm thinking of our senior election officials. Tom and I were talking about it just before we actually started this morning in terms of the vulnerability of our election officials inadvertently receiving maybe, you know, incorrect instructions or whatever. Have there been any verified or even perceived examples of where that's happened anywhere this year? Do you know?
Think of this as really an outgrowth of what advertisers dream of, which is how do you persuade people to buy soap? And so there's been a lot of early work in micro-targeting. What we're seeing now with AI, Jeff Cole's an expert in media and monitorizing things, and he'll tell you that one reason that television, radio, newspapers are having difficulty is that advertisers have learned that through micro-targeting, it's much more efficient than buying an ad on television or radio or putting an ad in the newspaper. So the same thing is happening now with micro-targeting of bad and good political messages. It's just that we didn't expect it to be to scale this way in numbers, but also in use of, again, publicly available data. And we've heard for years from people in the US, we've heard for years from people in Silicon Valley saying, privacy, forget about it. You've already given it up. There's already enough about you online to know who you are in ways that you may not realize. And so that's what we're dealing with now, which is, and again, for 2028, I'm just taking a deep breath and hoping that people who, like Julian, who look at the dark web and look at things that are not immediately visible, are able to surface these campaigns so that we can see them and respond to them. But in addition to the micro-targeting and seeing and responding to them, the responses have to be different. Okay, someone is concerned about her grandmother's pension. Okay, you respond to that, not necessarily with verifiable true facts. You do that too, but you have to figure out other ways of responding to that emotionally, and that's going to take a lot of work. I mean, you're asking a question which is really troubling to a lot of people, and it affects us all.